Hello, hello again. I just asked our next speaker what he would do. He said he's going to be a singer. Should we ask him to sing instead of present? So sorry. We have Guy Barel, CEO and co-founder of Canditech, and he's going to talk about how to assess and hire talent, the skill-based hiring playbook for the I stage. We will try to take questions at the end. Enjoy.
Hey, can you hear me? Great. I didn't know that you're going to tell them that I'm going to be a singer. I need to drink a few beers before. Everyone, good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and listen to my session. I'm Guy. I'm co-founder and CEO at Canditech, a company that basically provides hiring managers and talent acquisition managers with the tools to create tailor-made job simulations for any role within the company for evaluating candidates. Everything from R&D, BI, analytics, all the way to marketing, sales, HR, blue-collar positions, and everything between. A few words about myself, besides being a singer. Up until 5 years ago, I was a general manager of a gaming studio. Before that, I did some other roles in the field of marketing, product, gaming, etc. And during my last few positions, I found myself a lot dealing with hiring people for a large variety of different roles, which was a very big pain for me and for my managers. You are very familiar with the pain, so I can skip the full explanations. Just in a nutshell, so many resume screenings, so many interviews, so many phone calls, and all that in order to finally hire someone who is not necessarily the right person for the job. But the worst part is that I felt that I'm losing great candidates. So I teamed up with two amazing people. Today they are my partners. Came from companies such as Microsoft and Google as tech leaders. And the idea was to build a platform that will help us with our needs, what officially became Canditech around 5 years ago, with a vision of a world without resume. The idea is to provide more and more candidates with a fair chance to showcase their skills and potential regardless of their resume and background, and while doing so, to help recruiters and hiring managers to hire better people faster while diversify their teams and provide an amazing candidate experience. A few words about the company. We work all over the world in Europe with tests that can be written in any language, in North America, Latin America, APAC, companies with the highest global standard for test validation, employer branding, candidate experience, everything from very techy Nasdaq-traded companies such as Monday.com, Wix, etc., all the way to companies that are hiring on a very high scale globally, such as Glovo, Wolt, Manpower Group, Deloitte, and many, many others. When we just started the company, we did so many discovery calls with HR professionals like you, with hiring managers like you, and basically asking them, what are your pains? What are the challenges? How is the process currently look like? And what we discovered is that in the vast majority of the cases, companies that used to put much more weight on the candidate's resume rather than their potential for doing the actual job, reported that they see much more time-consuming processes, costlier processes, with low efficiency in the end. And you are all very familiar with the reasons for that, right? We all know that resume is basically built on bias. Great candidates can be screened out based on age, gender, country, university, etc. But also now in the field, especially in the age of AI, when you're hiring people based on their experience and less about their potential, you may lose great candidates because today it's not enough to evaluate candidate coding skills in Java, in Python. You also would like to see how they can adapt new technology, how they can work with ChatGPT or Gemini, how they can adapt to the new changing environment, how they can learn, how they can grow with a job, things that it's very hard to tell based on their resume. And also, great candidates can be filtered out because of the classic 2 years experience. Again, in most of the cases, you would like to hire people that can do the job very well, regardless if they have 2 or 3 or 4 years experience. It's very easy to manipulate, for sure, we all know that. But especially these days, when candidates are using ChatGPT to write their resume based on the job description that was written with ChatGPT, and then the ATS scrape the ChatGPT keywords using, the resume keywords using ChatGPT, it's not the best way to evaluate candidates based on their actual skills. And the bottom line is that it's not the best predictor for doing that, especially today when most of the research shows that skill-based hiring predicts candidate success in a role 5 times better than relying on education and more than twice as well as relying on work experience. So this is just one of the reasons why so many candidates so many companies in the past few years are switching from resume-based hiring to skill-based hiring, which basically means that they are focusing more on evaluating candidates based on their abilities and skills rather than on subjective data, such as resume, gender, or background, and of course, in a bias-free manner. There are so many ways to implement skill-based hiring into the processes, or into the hiring process. We will not have the time to talk about everything today. But just in a nutshell, regarding the first bullet of conducting skill mapping, which may sound very trivial, especially today, it's not that trivial. Just an example, in many cases, you would not like to hire a developer only with great Python skills. One of the skills that you would like to evaluate is how they can use ChatGPT in order to streamline their work. When you're hiring for a content manager, it's not only about writing a great article. It's also about how they can use AI in order to create thousands of articles within a week. So the whole process of skill mapping became a little bit more challenging, especially today. Of course, it's also about standardization and structured interviews and educate the HR and the hiring managers. But what I would like to focus today is job simulations or skill assessment or work sample test. Because by all studies, work sample tests that mimic the actual job as much as possible are considered to be the best predictor for job suitability and also the most objective tool in order to do so. So how a job simulation can look like, it really depends, but depending on the role, developer, for example, they can write code for sure, but the idea is not just to write or to solve a coding riddle. The idea is that the developer or the candidate will write code that really mimics the actual job and the actual challenges that they will need to face when, hopefully, they will get the job. But not only that. Today, you're not hiring only for coders. You would also like to see how someone can work with a team, how they can communicate complicated ideas, how they can refer the code to a colleague. But not only that. In many cases, especially today, you would like to see how they can adapt themselves to changes. If, for example, there was a change made by the product manager, how they can implement this change to the product quickly. When it comes to hiring for data roles, it's not only about working with Excel and databases. It's also about how they can write SQL and Python, but also how they can get to business conclusions. Because you would like to see the logical connection, not just to see that the candidate can do some technical things, but how they can write email with the business action items, how they can deliver data, how they can deliver complicated ideas, the English level or Spanish level, or any other language that usually you evaluate in a very late stage of the process. The idea is use job simulation to see it very early on. But also when it comes to hire people for client-facing skills or for client-facing roles, such as salespeople. It's not only about how they will sell your product and will handle with objections, but also how they can be technical. Because in many cases, a salesperson within the company should answer very technical questions made by very sophisticated clients, etc. Technical team will chat with the potential clients and lots of other things that basically will allow you and the managers to see how the candidate will do the job before they get the job. This is from your side, but from the candidate side, the idea is that job simulation are one of the most effective tools for boosting the candidate experience and promoting fairness because of the high face validity of the assessment. High face validity means that the candidate really understands why they are doing the tasks that you ask them to do. So a common feedback would be, to get from candidates, is that they really appreciate the option to get a sense of how the future job is going to look like, rather than just having a test, and also that they feel like this is a much more accurate way to evaluate their skills for the job. Of course, implementing of AI today, the platforms offer some great solutions in that regard, basically in order to do things on scale, because everything can be checked and scored automatically, but also in an objective and bias-free manner in order to save time and money and really streamline the processes. We can't talk about skill assessments today without mentioning cheating prevention and proctoring. So just in a nutshell, there are some very great solutions in the market today in order to make sure that no one will cheat in your assessments. Just to name a few of them, the platforms today can recognize anomalies. So if, for example, while candidates are taking the test, the platform recognizes any suspicious activity, such as typing speed, cursor movements, changes of IP or devices during the test, copy and paste. The platform can provide notifications for the candidates during the test if they're doing something which is suspicious. And also, of course, everything will be monitored for the managers to see in the test report. Some other features can be randomization of questions, so no candidate will get the same test, or timed tests, or webcam snapshots, which basically means that the candidate would be recorded during the whole session. Another thing today is to recognize ChatGPT. So if candidates use ChatGPT during the test, you can tell that. That said, in many cases, or today in most of the cases, you would like to see how candidates work with ChatGPT or with other AI tools. It doesn't necessarily mean that they cheated, right? So it really depends with the role, with the test, and what you try to evaluate. But again, today, you would like to see how the candidate write prompts. You would like to see how the candidate can adapt to new technologies. Their critical thinking when it comes to AI, how they can find the right balance between machine and human. And the idea is that when you allow the candidate to use ChatGPT or other AI tools while they're taking the test, and to make sure that it will be checked and scored automatically, it can really streamline the process. But moreover, it will allow you to evaluate the new skills of today that are super crucial when evaluating candidates, not only for tech, but for any other role within the company. So, assuming that I was convincing up until now, you may ask yourself, or you may ask me, why now? Because we know from the 80s, from Schmidt and Hunter and some other researchers, that job simulations or work sample tests considered to be the best predictor for job suitability. And the reason why now is because of the technology, because of the AI in the past few years and how it becomes so much accessible for users and for you to use. Because if up until a few years ago, creating a job simulation or a skill assessment test was so time-consuming, manual, and costly process, now it can be done in just a click of a button. For example, in our platform, you can just take the job description, copy and paste it to the platform, so a test can be generated automatically according to that. If in the past, scoring a job simulation was a very time and manual process, now it can be done automatically using AI. Today, things can be done in a very high scale, on a very high volume via the ATS, because everything can be managed via the ATS. The ATSs today offer some great solutions internally, but also they can integrate with most of the leading skill assessment providers out there. And of course, one of the most important things is, A, that it can be done for a large variety of different roles, not only for evaluating developers' code, but also for marketing, sales, HR, finance, blue-collar positions, etc. And B, the candidate experience, as mentioned, because the candidate can really feel in a tailor-made or custom-made solution or process that they get a chance of how the future job is going to look like. That said, something which is very important to mention is the AI is not a replacement for the human touch, right? There is no replacement for that, not yet. So we always say that we are not aiming to replace the human touch. There is no replacement for the job interview, for the candidate to visit your beautiful office, for the candidate to meet their future management, to feel the vibes of the company, for you to have some deeper conversation with the candidates. There is no replacement for that. But the idea is to provide companies with the option to start the process with many people, but immediately understand who are the people that they would like to bring for the interview and spend their time interviewing them and doing the costly process. So it leads me to a very common question in this stage, which basically says, in what stage of the process we recommend to share an assessment with the candidates? So as always, with most of the cases, it really depends. It's depends with the role, if you're hiring for a Java developer or for a BDR or SDR. It depends with the seniority, if you're hiring for juniors or for people with 15 years experience. And it depends with the region, if you're hiring in Berlin, London, New York, or in India. So it really depends, but we see two main use cases that are very common. The first one is to share a test very early on within the process, before even someone talks to the candidates. One example is a British client that we work with. It's a relatively small company, 400 employees. They usually start the process for a data analyst with between 30 to 40 candidates. But once they created a test that they were happy with, they managed to start the process with 1,500 people without even talking to them. In 5 days, 85% of the people submitted the test. They brought the top 10 for a video interview and hired 2 junior data analysts within a week. By the way, the feedback was that besides of shortening the time to hire dramatically and reduce the unnecessary interviews, it allows them to start the process with people that in a traditional process, only based on their resume, they will never start with. And this is the feedback that we like to get the most. And in their case, they didn't stop using resume. They just flipped the process. They read the candidate's resume, but only after they approved their potential and skills for doing the actual job. That said, many companies are sharing the test after the first call with the recruiter. But then the recruiter, they're not spending the time in order to understand if the candidate knows Python, R, critical thinking, English level, and how they can work with the team. They just explain how cool it is to work for the company, and then they suggest the candidate to take a short test that will give them a glance of how the future job is going to look like. In this scenario, we see that almost 100% of the candidates are taking the test. And again, it allows companies to open their pool of candidates. A feedback that we got from a client is they were hiring for data analysts. And for being a data analyst in this company, you needed to have at least 2 years experience in SQL for any role which is data related. But now anyone who says that they know SQL, they get a test. So it was a game changer for the process because they see that people that consider to be juniors, people that didn't have the 2 years experience in SQL now become great analysts for the company. So again, they're still using resume, but they give more weight for the candidate resume and more weight for their potential skills for doing the actual job. Another question can be, but what if we already have assessments? Because most of the tech and professional services companies that we work with, they already have assessments. Something that the hiring managers created using Google Doc, Excel, PDF, etc. So today, most of the platforms are very customizable. It means that you can basically take the assessments that you created by the team, that you're super happy with, you can implement it to the platforms, so everything would be checked and scored automatically. People will not be able to cheat. You will have all the data in one place, and you can integrate it with the ATS to really streamline the applicant tracking system, to really streamline the whole process. Okay, so a few tips for creating a great job simulation. And I think that we cover most of the bullets here. So the first one would be to create a job simulation, to mimic the actual job as much as possible. Again, because it's considered to be the best predictor for future job performance, but also from the candidate side, they will really appreciate the option to get a glance of how the future job is going to look like. Assess real-world AI capabilities. Again, using AI or using ChatGPT during an assessment, it doesn't necessarily mean that the candidate cheated. In many cases, you would like to see how they work with ChatGPT because it's a crucial part from the future job. Hard skills and soft skills, for sure, to get a very holistic understanding of the candidates. If you're hiring for a technical role, you would like to see not only how the developers can write code, but also how they can work with the team. But if you're hiring for a client-facing role, again, it's not only about their soft skills, it's also about their technical skills and how they can work on a technical product in a technical environment, etc. Thank you. Keep it short and timed. One of the most important things when it comes to candidate experience, and again, what is a short test? Depending on the role, seniority, region, etc. We can share some benchmarks later, but in a nutshell, for tech and professional services roles, usually for the seniority of between 0 to 5 or 6 years, it will be between 40 to 90 minutes, depending on all the criteria that I just mentioned. Include anti-cheating measures, score with AI, and ensure ethical and bias-free language. it's a topic by itself, but just an example. If you're hiring globally, you would not like to provide the candidates with a case study regarding the tube in London, because then the candidates from London will have a slight advantage. If you will have any questions regarding building skill assessments, job simulations, or just you would like to make sure that the tests that you are currently using are valid, reliable, and bias-free, feel free to scan the code and have a short discovery call or short discussion with Dr. Marwan Sela. She is a PhD psychometrician, and she will be more than happy to help you with your assessments regardless of Canditech and our service. Just one thing that I wanted to mention is that you would like to integrate it with your current processes. So if you are using an applicant tracking system, just for you to know that today most of the leading solutions are integrated with the ATS, which basically means that the whole process can be managed via the ATS. You can share assessments via the ATS and get all the results to the ATS. And some of the ATSs and some of the vendors also offer you solutions for the pre-screening part in order to really streamline the process. Just imagine that for some of the roles and for some of the regions, when the candidate apply, they will immediately get a chatbot on WhatsApp or SMS, asking them like very basic questions. Are you willing to work in our branch in Berlin? What is your salary expectations, etc. And then according to that, you can move them to the relevant stage within the ATS and then to share an assessment automatically. To sum up, using job simulations during the process, you should be expecting to start the process with many people, but immediately understand who are the people that you would like to move forward with. And by doing that, you should save around 80% of the unnecessary interview and shorten the time to hire by around 50%. You should reduce the chances for mishire, because again, it should be considered the best predictor for job suitability. You should be able to discover the new crucial AI skills, and also to save time and money during the process. How much time and money? Again, it really depends. You can scan the QR code, put your specific details, and see how much money you can save by implementing job simulations into the process. Thank you so much for listening. So we have enough time for questions?
Wonderful. Yes, we do have enough time for questions. Oh, sorry. Is it going to be on? 2, 1, 2. I'm sorry, technologies, right? Yeah, it's not going to take over, but we have some questions. Benjamin asking, are there concerns about AI regulations regarding human performance evaluation?
So the answer is yes, of course. When it comes to AI, there are always concerns, especially when it comes to evaluating candidates. So while implementing an AI solution for skill assessment, for resume screening, for anything which is related for evaluating candidates, there are many things that you will need to check. One of them, or I would say that the main two, is the first one, how did the AI learn? Like, what is the data that was used by the AI in order to learn and to evaluate your candidates? And the second thing is that you would like to make sure that it's not a black box, that if the candidate was rejected or if the candidate got 80 points and not 100 points, you would like to know why. There are so many other things, but the answer is yes, and you must check that the tool is valid in terms of AI.
Great. We have more questions. Nicola is asking, how do you ensure bias-free scoring using AI if the LLMs themselves are known to be biased?
So it's related to my first answer, but it's not enough. You need to make sure that the tools will have all the data and internal tools in order to show you how everything is valid, reliable, bias-free, and not discriminative candidates.
There is a question also, like a little bit more generic, like asking how are skills assessed already in the big companies? Do you do any research? Do you know what they're doing now already?
Yeah, so it's really depends, but I would say that surprisingly or not surprisingly, in many cases, especially when it comes to the early stages of the process, it will be by asking candidates. Like, I see that you have 3 years experience in Python, is that right? Yes. I see that you can work in the team, is that right? Yes. And according to that, they are moving candidates to have the first interview with the technical team. And then it's usually the first time when hiring managers are really evaluating the candidate professional skills and soft skills as well. And this is just one of the reasons why we are suggesting candidates to put skill assessment very early on within the process, usually before the first call with the recruiter or after the first call with the recruiters.
Great. Do we have any questions in the audience we can take from the audience? Anyone wants me to see me running around? Okay.
Thank you so much for the time. Okay. Meanwhile, I will say that if you have any further questions, we have a booth over there, and you are more than welcome to come and chat with us regarding skill-based hiring, skill assessments, or anything that you think that we can be helpful.
I just wanted to know, like, how many, like, if you can use your tool, like, for how many applicants or how many people you need to screen that the effort you put in actually comes to this outcome, no? Because it's usually a numbers game. So if I only have 3 applicants, I probably will not go through the full process. But if I'm like looking for data analysts and I get like 250 applicants, then it probably makes sense. So do we have like is there a turning point where you say this makes sense?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you. First, in terms of taking the time for creating the assessment, in most of the cases, you will find it in our library because we have more than 500 assessments in our library. So if you are hiring for a mainstream role, data analyst you mentioned, you can find so many different assessments that you can just plug and play and share it with your candidates. By the way, you can also adjust it to your specific needs and to your specific team. That said, if you are hiring for a very niche role and you would like to create a test that will be very tailor-made for your specific company, maybe you would like to spend, I don't know, 30 minutes, 1 hour, and then it's your call if it's worth it based on the number of candidates that you have. That said, another thing that I wanted to mention that we work with smaller companies that are struggling with attracting more candidates. So they are using this type of assessments for sourcing. Like, for example, they will create a test, a very short version of a test, and they will put it in their career page, or they will share it on social media or in a job board, or they will share the test with all the candidates that apply, even people that now are rejected or excluded out from the process. Basically saying something like, we're a very cool and innovative company, we don't really care about your resume, we more care about your potential. So if you think that you can be a great data analyst within our company, here is a 15 minutes challenge. So it can be also a tool to increase the pool of candidates.
Thank you so much. Round of applause.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy. Find them at the booth area. So thank you. You have a break right now. I see you 10 minutes after 2. Enjoy the break.